Welcome to the 1457 podcast from Scotland, where golf began. A digital platform where we want to inspire you, the listening golfers, near and far, with our great photography, short films, stories, and of course our podcasts. To come to Scotland to play our fine golf courses, all the ones we talk about, the famous, the not so well known, and you'll find all you need to know on our website, scotlandwheregolfbegan.com. And you'll see us on social, at Where Golf Began, and Facebook, Scotland Where Golf Began. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Today I'm going to introduce your panel of resident golf nuts. We have Mr. Dave Kerr, who's sitting there in his beautiful little studio with all those kind of new little bits and bobs. How are you, Dave?
I'm very well, Malcolm. Very well indeed. How are you?
I'm not bad, but I think we got the new name for the resident Aussie, the Scuzzy.
I'll take it. Self-anointed Scuzzy, and great to be back. Thanks for having me. It's good to see both you gentlemen and our esteemed guest that's going to join us in a minute. I'm looking forward to catching up, who you're about to introduce, Malcolm. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for that, Roscoe. And I'm Malcolm Duck, your out-of-work restaurateur atelier seeking gainful employment. But today we have a very special guest. We've got Mr. Neil Hampton, the General Manager of Royal Dornoch Golf Club. Welcome, Neil. How are you?
Thank you very much, Malcolm. I'm very well indeed, and very much thanks for the invite, and great to see Dave and Ross again.
Now, I had to do a wee bit of research, and I didn't realise you had an empathy with Dave, because you're actually a fifer that became a chuchter that went halfway up the country, out the islands, back again, and ended up in Royal Dornoch. So why did you move from Fife to the islands?
That is correct. Yeah, Malcolm, I was born in Fife, and our family come from Burnt Island. So actually, Bornicker Cottage is still on the road from Burnt Island where the hospital was. But by then, when I came along, my father was the professional and the greenkeeper at Burnt Island Golf Club. And so I was the second of our three boys. My younger brother wasn't born yet, but my father got a job in as the professional greenkeeper, and together my mum and dad were the steward and stewardess at Stornoway Golf Club out in the Western Isles. So as a young, I was only 1 year old when we went to Stornoway. And so my older brother Graham and I went over there, and my younger brother Ross was conceived and born out in Stornoway. But quite interesting times out there, because they ran the pro shop. Mum would run the pro shop, as well as the two of them running the bar, as well as Dad being on the golf course. So interesting times out there. I think things moved on from then, and then that's when we came back to the mainland, as you've alluded to. And so yeah, there's a nice long story about my dad being the very last man in Scotland from our research to be both a professional and a greenkeeper at the same time, doing both jobs. As you know, the game back then was a one-man band almost, and so Dad was one of those many men who did everything. So it's something to be proud of, and we're very pleased about Dad, and his history lives on in that. And so that's where we are. But yes, a long circuitous journey, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on. But yeah, ended up in Dornoch, starting from Fife.
Can I ask, Neil, I don't know what age you left Stornoway, but how do you play the first hole at Stornoway Golf Club?
Yeah, good question, Dave. I was 8 when we left, and when I left, it was still a 12-hole course. But that was still the first hole. The dog leg get up the hill round the corner, yeah. But
the trees are too high to cut the corner. It's not quite a drive till you run out a fairway. It's a really interesting start to a round of golf, I think.
And the fairway slopes right to left, but yet it's a left. It's a left to right dog leg, so you're always fighting against the contours, yeah. So I did go back in the late 90s to go and play a very big thing over there called the Western Isles Open, which is one of your kind of 4D Open style things, but has many other events pushed round about it. So I played there, and so when I remember those days, which is nearly 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was a long iron off the tee and then a short iron into the green. So by then the trees were, again, like I say, Dave, too high to try and cut the corner with your driver. So yeah, it is a very interesting hole, especially a very difficult one to start with.
You've been really steeped in golf really since you came out your mum's womb. You've been almost at a golf club in your hand, and you kind of know what to do with it, because club champion at Rosemount for Rosemarkie, 10 years on the trot.
Yeah, Fortrose and Rosemarkie, for those that are trying to pronounce it. That's where we ended up. That's when I was 8, we moved there, and I was there for my kind of formative golfing life. And it wasn't club champion. It was the Black Isle Open, which is our premier 36-hole championship every year. So yeah, I did win a number of times And it was I was very keen on golf. The very first picture ever of me golfing wise is in Stornoway, and I was about 3 years old, I think. And there was a little pencil bag over my shoulder with 2 or 3 clubs in it, and the bag is much bigger than me, so it's trailing along the ground, even though it's on my shoulder. And so I've always been around the golf, and so it's great to be at a place like Dornoch where you're, as you've used the word, steeped in it. So it's great.
And you've still got a pencil bag hanging over your shoulder. You've got quite a nice pencil bag. What kind of bag have you got? Mackenzie, is it?
Yes, I've got a Mackenzie bag, and it's the way I like to play the game. It's the way we were taught by my dad, who was a great junior coach. There's a number of members in Dornoch and around the Highlands who credit my dad with the way they play the game and getting them into the game, because he was, in those days, he went round under the auspices of the Golf Foundation around the local clubs, giving lots of lessons. So there's some good golfers here who we thank my dad for their talent. But yes, my dad, when he was speaking to us when we were young, he would say, hit it, and then run after it. Run after it. And there was any grown-ups come, stand out the way, let them pass. So I'm keen to get on with it, to Malcolm, and that's the way I think the game should be played.
I had Neil down for a game a while ago, and we chance to go and hit some golf balls and have some practice. I said, practice, Neil? He said, Bloody Mary. If you're quite right. But Neil, do the names Robert Kelly or Tom Pendrich or Ross Hepburn mean anything to you?
Very much indeed, quite a lot, and actually it's quite coincidental you've used their names recently, because I played a lot of curling. Curling mixes well, I think, with golf, and golf in the summer and curling in the winter. And I got into curling when I was in school, and so got involved in that and enjoyed it, and ended up, playing a few around Scotland mostly and stuff. And then as you do, you meet people, you get on with people. Curling's a very social sport, so you get chatting to a lot of guys. So I ended up in a team with Bob Kelly and Tom Pendrich and Ross Hepburn, and we were, for a little period of time, we were quite successful, and we won the Scottish Championships back in the year 2000. So represented Scotland in the World Championships. And it just so happens, Malcolm, I don't know if you knew this, but I had a big bunch of VHS videotapes that lying in my house. I thought I really must do something with them. And for the last 2 or 3 years, I think I must digitize them. So I did. And just yesterday, I was looking at the videos of the Scottish Curling Championships that we won back in 2000.
But you were Scottish champion, were you not?
Yeah. Scottish Curling Champions in 2000, yeah. And then we played in the World Championships, which were at the new curling leisure and got a shopping facility called Braehead, which hadn't long opened at that point.
So all your family play golf too. How are their golf swings?
Yeah. My older brother doesn't play so much, but he was a decent. He got down to about 4 or 5. My younger brother Ross, who we mentioned earlier, is a good golfer. He got down to single figures when he was 16 or 17, and then found the joys of work, and it's coming back to it now, and again is back to a single figure handicap. So yeah, they both try and play. I think our older brother doesn't so much these days. His health isn't all that great, but Ross and myself, the younger brother, we play a bit together and have a boys' weekend that we go away with every year, and so we play a bit and have the odd beer, as you've alluded to, and have good fun.
Now, Dornoch, tell me how you got to Dornoch and what you think of Dornoch as a place. Because, the golf club really is a kind of epicenter of... Dornoch has lots of different things, but Dornoch's changed a lot. How's it moved and changed, not just the golf club, but the town and the accommodation and the restaurants and so on over your time there?
It's a good question. I was enjoying my job at Inverness. I was running a golf facility in Inverness that had driving range and restaurants and a golf course. So it was more of the hospitality side that it majored on rather than the golf side. But we were there to do it all. And in that period, met Fiona, my wife, which was connected to the World Curling Championships because she was running all the main dinners. So I saw her there, and we got married in Dornoch. That was a precursor to because I was running the first incarnations of Golf Highland, Malcolm. We talked about this before. Something we're talking about just now is the Highland Golf Tourism Development Strategy, which the Highland Council put together in the late 90s, and in the days where you could get funding from Europe, and there was funding for a full-time post, which I managed to get hold of, and through that, it was based in Dornoch. My first real introduction to what Dornoch was. As a golfer, I had played at Dornoch many times, but as I've said, I was very keen on my golf, so I was more focused on trying to make pars and birdies and not make bogeys than actually standing back and looking at the aesthetics, the golf course design, the views, everything. So I was more focused on the playing of the game rather than what the golf course was saying to me. And so coming back to Dornoch in the late 90s, actually, I was kind of getting towards the end of playing too much or concentrating too much on my golf, and really enjoyed what Dornoch was and why it was there and the town itself. And so that was nice. So we got married there, and then we made a little pact that we would retire to Dornoch when the time came, and so that was great. But so 7 or 8 years after that point, the job as a general manager at Dornoch was advertised, and Mrs. Hampton saw it and says, you must get that job. I want to go there.
And Mrs. Hampton says Mr. Hampton does.
Well, you met Mrs. Hampton, so there is only one answer, and that is yes, dear. And so we went through the interview process, and fortunately, thankfully, I got the job, and that was in late 2010. But yeah, that's to follow on to what your real question is. What has changed? I think up until then, the town and the club weren't good pals. They weren't friends. The club had, for some reason, managed to think itself slightly more elevated from the town than it should have been. An idea of who it was and not what it should have been. And so my job, and it was very plainly set to me, was to reinvigorate the relationships with the town, to make sure that the club was part of the town and both worked together for the good of the area. And so that was a big part of my time there, was being involved in lots of local committees and lots of local boards, a local community interest company. I was part of the bid. And so there was a lot of work in that, a lot of evenings out to try and make sure that the town was working closely with the club and the club was working with the town. And so, yeah, that was a big part of it. And together we've really grown what golf means to Dornoch once again, and to make the most of it for everyone. And so, yes, restaurants, hotels, a couple of new hotels come along. Restaurants just reopened in the last couple of years. So it's been a very vibrant time, and as you know, COVID has been good for golf, and Dornoch really has jumped on that bandwagon, and we are making the most of what it is. And I like to believe, and I like to understand that the town thank us for that, but only because we're trying hard to work with them.
You got us other meetings, a bit more than board meetings. You've got a bit of whiskey going on there now with different things going on. A wee whiskey festival you get involved with?
Yes. I was asked to be part of the very first organising committee for the Dornoch Whisky Festival, and we've just had our 10th year, and so it's gone very, very well. It's the last weekend in October every year, and you've come up and sampled it with us once so far. It's great fun. Starts on the Friday night and then finishes on the Sunday afternoon. We do a couple of events in the golf club here, one a whiskey and gin featured event and one a golf event. But there is, off the top of my head, about 30 different events, whiskey related, that run through the town over the weekend, plus our grand tasting, which takes place in the Dornoch Castle Hotel in a big marquee, and we get about 300 people throughout the day tasting lots of different whiskies supplied by 20 to 25 different vendors. So a great day. If you like your whiskey, it's a great time to come.
Sounds like a place to go and do a podcast from, boys. Ross, you kind of smell whiskey. Does Dave, any kind of favourite whiskies for viewers from up that area? You must have some whiskey stories from up there.
I do. So one that I've been kind of switched on to relatively recently, which I probably had neglected until now, was Balblair. So I've always been a fan of Macallan's and the range that Glenmorangie have, but Balblair was one that I'd probably neglected a little bit till relatively recently. But they do some amazing whiskies. Their 15-year-old is now absolutely one of my absolute favourites, and we've had some great success with clients who've gone and went to whiskey tastings at somewhere like Balblair. They do a terrific tour of that facility. And again, I think the kind of natural bedfellows of golf and whiskey make the region that you represent, Neil, such a wonderful place for a trip for anyone from within the UK or from somewhere internationally. And again, one of the things that they're probably Royal Dornoch has always had a terrific reputation for me amongst Scottish golfers. One of the things that surprised me when I came into the industry in 2019 was that from the American clients that we were seeing, probably the number 2 requested course in Scotland was Dornoch. And that's got a lot to do with the amazing impact that you've had up there, Neil. I wonder, there's some amazing developments that you're going through at the moment, but how have you seen other than obviously the relationship with the town that you've touched on, how have you seen the golf club itself evolve over the period that you've been there?
Good question, Dave. How I've seen it evolve, I'm not sure, because when you're right in the middle of things, you're not on the outside looking at what the changes are. But I think we've made it a much more personable place. I think we've made it a much more welcoming place. We've worked hard on our staff to create a team. We've worked on how the team present themselves, what the ethos as a club is, and it was one of the phrases I use is for the new staff when we do inductions is, and it's something I wish I'd thought of. But I was sitting with a visitor up in the bar a number of years ago, and he said, "You know what I like about Dornoch and why I keep coming?" I said, "What's that?" I said, "What's that?" He says, "It's relaxed quality." He says, "You're all very, very good at what you do. You're all nice and friendly with it. You know, it's all the high levels of hospitality service you would expect, but you guys are so friendly, so cheery, so relaxed, so it's like being part of the family, you know." And that's what we strive for. It's because we're a community golf club. There is no airs and graces here. If all three of you walk in, you'll be called by your first name, you know, and nobody is different from anybody else. All our staff are given membership with the golf club. That's part of what you get for being a staff member. So when you're off duty, come and use the facilities and be treated like a member. And then we try to encourage and make sure the members do the same when the staff are working, that they are your friends first, you know, and then the staff second, to make sure that we all get on really well together. And that's what I like about it. It's the golf club itself is a community. And I think those even from overseas, a number of overseas members like that feel about it. They come from clubs which are much more high level, if I can put it like that, and they want to come and relax here. And so that's what we're trying to pervade here is, and I think that's back to my earlier point, was missing from the club before was it was trying to elevate it into a position that it really shouldn't have been and really couldn't attain, because it's not that type of area that we live in.
You just got a new young lady in the shop that's done 2 years the RNA and golf management. I think, did I see that on LinkedIn?
Yes, Caitlin born and brought up in the area and studied at UHI for her honours degree and wanted to sample something different, and so got a job at the R&D in the member services area, but was always hankering to come back. And when we advertised for a retail supervisor, she jumped at the chance. And it just so happens her then boyfriend and now her fiance, Ali, has got the job as our teaching pro. So he's leading up our junior program, which is receiving big plaudits over the last year or so. So it's great to have them both here. And we've just done we do a winter newsletter every January for the members, to encapsulate what happened the year before, and it goes out with our subs. So once in a while we ask a new member of staff to give us their little bio, and so Caitlin's done 500 words herself this year. And she said it's just as I was alluded to, she always wanted to come back to Dornoch. It's a place she loved. Golf, it's where she learned golf, where her other teaching pro taught her how to play, and that's where she got into it. But she said a very nice thing about Ali, her now fiance, that it's her best friend and her forever friend. And the two of them seem so delighted to be with each other and delighted to work together. So we're very happy we've got both of them. They seem very passionate and very enthusiastic about both the roles, and I think that shines through in the service we provide to the members and the juniors and the visitors.
So tell us a wee bit UHI, because you've got a lot of unique stuff up there. Because there's UHI not much around like it round about Scotland, is there?
No. Well, the golf management and the golf professional degrees at the UHI are very unique. It's the only facility in Scotland is licensed by the PGA to deliver these. Generally, when I first started here, and my experience through golf was that you'd have to go down to the Belfry if you wanted to be a PGA pro and do your distance learning and do your block release and everything. But when they started the university in 2000, the big plan was to get PGA accreditation so they could do it. And so that arrived about a dozen years ago. So that's when we've seen the big change in the number of students coming. Initially, it was 10 to 12 students a year, and now we're getting 20 to 30 students a year coming to register and take part in these programs. So at the moment, we have just over 80 students on campus throughout the learning season, as it were. And then, thankfully for us, that means that we can take a few of them in here and give them for education as seasonal staff and as interns. So it's great. So it's been a very positive program. And when you do the research on where they've gone, there's UHI students who have passed their degrees all around the world. New Zealand, Australia, America, some in South Africa, some are working on the tours now. So the reach of the UHI is huge.
Neil, is managing the staff in the golf club where, you definitely got two peak seasons. You've got the summer and it's extremely busy, and then, you move into the winter where there's less light and, you're covered in frost and snow and so forth. How do you go about as a club manager, managing that ebb and flow of different seasonalities and staff, and especially in somewhere that's so far away from, some of the bigger towns. How does that work?
Yeah, it is a difficult thing to go from the peak of a business when everybody's running flat out, and Malcolm knows what it's like when you almost feel like you're 24/7, to coming down to days like that we've had over the last week where the weather hasn't been so good and the place is quite empty. And it is hard to manage. We most of the staff are on annualized contracts, so that they can have lots more rest days at this time of year. And when we employ them, we talk to them about that, the peaks and troughs, But again, it's building the team, And so twice a year we have all staff meetings, Ross, where we get them in the room. We talk about, depending the time of year, what business it's been and how good it's been and what's happened and what the plans are for the close season, or at the end of the close season we get it back in and talk to them about being rested, what the plans are for the coming season, what the new developments are, to make sure they're included in all the discussions. I think it's very important that staff communication is there so they know what's happening at the club. So, we try it with these two meetings. Every time we have a managers meeting, we send out the notes so they understand what the operational discussions are. Every staff has their annual PRD or performance review, so they get involved in their personal goals and where they're going. And it's making sure that everybody speaks to everybody else. Like the members we've talked about are all first interns, same with all the staff. Get to know the staff, speak to the staff, make sure that the line manager are speaking to them on a daily basis, make sure they're feeding back to me, make sure that whenever you go and go somewhere, you speak to them. And I think it's very important. One of the biggest things I did, and I recommend this to everybody, is as a tip I got a long time ago, was every staff member gets a birthday card from me, and it's handwritten by me. And so I try and put in a little message about them personally. And so you don't know what to write unless you know the staff. So you've got to be out there speaking to everybody. And it's a nice touch. We have about 70 staff, so there's 70 birthday cards every year. And I enjoy writing them because it makes me think about who they are and finding out a bit more about them and, understanding where their personal goals are and why they're here. And so, yeah, it's a difficult thing, Ross, to keep everybody on board. But I think we're doing pretty well with most of them, yeah.
That story alone, it signifies to me how you look after your guests and your members. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Dave, are you going to jump in there?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched upon UHI there. And again, I think one of the things that I've probably seen in Dornoch over the 5 years that I've been involved in the industry is the evolution of the accommodation offer in the Dornoch as well. Everything from UHI, I've got halls of residence which are available in the summer if you're looking for something at that end of the spectrum, right up to through the Royal Golf Hotel, which is a great facility, the changes that Marine and Lawn have done to Dornoch Station, the beautiful Links House, which is right next to you, which is an amazing facility. Again, you must have seen some significant changes in that space in the time that you've been at Royal Dornoch.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. And I think there has been a big sea change in the way accommodation works these days. And I think the biggest thing that I would note, and it's great you mentioned all the great hotels, it's what our level of golfer is looking for. It's a change from bed and breakfast to self-catering. When I first started here, everybody did bed and breakfast. It seemed to be what the way the world wanted to do. But as we know with things like Airbnb and apps like that, they've all moved really into self-catering. There's very, very few bed and breakfasts left, because people want to live that way. But it's nice to see what the hotels have done. Links House, it's been a great addition to the area. When Links House is next to the golf club, and when I arrived, it was the old manse for the church. And there was lots of huge trees. It was overgrown. It was kind of, wouldn't say dilapidated, but it was getting that way. And the team at Links House have really transformed into a great part of the town, a great looking part of the town, Royal Golf with Highland Coast Hotels. But yes, I think the biggest change has been Marine and Lawn taking over the big hotels, we called it, now called the Dornoch Station, and really turning it from a very downbeat bus tour, stack 'em high and sell 'em cheap place to being a proper 4.5, 5-star destination that people will go to. So yeah, I mean, Marine and Lawn have been a big hit in Scottish golf with what they've done, and they're certainly going to make a difference here. So I think it's important to recognise that Dornoch as a destination is very good, but the hotels serve a much bigger area. But primarily it's golf that people come for, and we Ross, you talked about the quiet season there, and we in the town and the community and all this, the business interest companies we're talking about are trying to extend the season and see what we can do in the winter time. But
Yeah, I know. Links House, for instance, do a lot in the kind of shooting and fishing as well, don't they? Which stretches that summer season a bit as well, doesn't it?
I think we've never really found the silver bullet as to what makes people come to Dornoch 12 months of the year. Golf is primarily and by far and away the biggest attraction. And if you're not golfing, then you're not really coming. It's very interesting. So if you've got any good ideas, boys, please share them.
Neil, you mentioned there golf being the significant attraction, and we've got half an hour into the podcast and we've discussed so much, but we haven't even started to talk about the two wonderful golf courses that you and your team are the stewards of, and very significant pieces of golf land, and what they represent for the golfing landscape, not only in Scotland but internationally, sought after around the world for people to come and play. And I had the benefit and privilege, Mr. Duck sent me on the way, with camera and drone earlier in the year, and to go and meet you, and I've been up a couple of times since, and I'd never been that far north in the country in all my visits, and I was blown away. And I'm sure many people are when they come for the first time or preparing to come for the first time. Tell us a little bit about the significance of Royal Dornoch, the championship course, and then the Struy course and the surrounding area. Why is the championship course so special and so sought after?
Tremendous question, that one we could, I'm sure, discuss at length in various ways. But I think it's what as Malcolm said, it's 1457, Scotland where golf began. I think it is the epitome of traditional links golf in Scotland. It's using the natural terrain that was there and letting you play golf on it. It never got the bulldozers in. It didn't do much to change it. It was just the imagination of the people setting out the course. And the course, to be fair, has changed in a few ways over the years. But I think the current layout, which is now, 70 odd plus years old in its current routing, I think really strikes with people what is traditional Scottish links golf. And I would like to take credit for being part of that, but I'm not. What we do know through recent history research, and one of the biggest things is the digitisation of newspapers, and we've done a lot of research into that, is that old Tom Morris is the man that should be credited with the upturned Plateau Greens. The first course that he would have seen, which was a 9-hole course, had flags in the bowls, in the low points, and the first routing, it bears no resemblance to what we have now. And it was old Tom that saw the benefits of put the flag on top of things rather than the bottom of things. And so he came and he extended the course in 1886 to 18-hole. But the biggest change then came at the Second World War, where we extended the course back as far as Embo, taking it along the rest of the raised beach, because up until then we used part of the Struy course, which we'll talk about. But that Struy course was used in the Second World War to park aeroplanes. And so at the end of the Second World War, the government gave us compensation in that smart manner. Our greenkeeper at the time said, why rebuild the flat bit when we have the beauty of the raised beach that extends all the way to Embo? Why don't we try and look at that? So new holes were created there, and they're 60 years younger than the holes that they followed on from. And I think the skill of the contractors putting them together was so good, and nobody can see the join. I think when you play those holes, and I explain to you what the difference is, people don't realise that they are two significantly different in age, but yet so similar in appearance and play. And I think that's what we need to do as we move on to the Struy course, Robs, to say that we are about to try and enhance our Struy course. We've bought a new piece of land beyond our 10th hole. So it's 50 acres of land, and we're out in the midst of speaking to golf course architects about it. But what we keep saying to them is you must keep the feeling, the play, the style of the current holes of the Struy course, and not just build us a new championship layout. What we want is the contrast that the Struy gives, where the championship course has lots of undulations, it's got big raised plateau greens, it's got deep bunkers, it runs along the two levels, so there's a lot of elevation change. Whereas the Struy is the opposite. It's quite flat. The fairway's a little bit narrower. The green's a bit smaller. There's less undulations. There's less bunkers. The bunker's shallower. But it has a unique challenge to itself in the way it flows. And so we've said that to architects, when you're redesigning new holes for that extra piece of land, you've got to keep that flow of what people see and how they play it. And so that's what we have there. But back to your original question about the championship course, I think it's so unique in the way it plays. I mean, it's almost a straight out and a straight back course. But when you look at each hole, plays in a slightly different angle. So you're never quite playing the same wind direction each time. We have the most fantastic hole in Foxy, which has no bunkers on it. Two of our shortest par fours, the first and the fifth, have 9 and 10 bunkers respectively. So it's so unique in the way they're put together. And I think that people, when they're playing, enjoy that feeling, but also the stunning views that we have. I credit Malcolm Campbell with saying that it can't be a links course unless you can see the sea. And so from every place on the championship course at Royal Dornoch, you can see the sea, no matter where you are. Even deep in the bushes, Malcolm, you can still see the sea.
Malcolm's never been there, so he wouldn't know that, but I certainly would.
Anyone that wanted to orient themselves around those newer holes, if they were looking at the map and they haven't been, correct me if I'm wrong, is that sort of 8, 9 out to the point towards
Yes.
Embo there? Yep.
So if you've played the championship course, the original holes went out to number 5 and then turned back and came down number 12. Yeah, so 6 through 11 are the new holes. They start going up the hill. 6 itself was a kind of par 3, was in the mix before that, but it's a longer story to tell you how that changed. But 7 through 11 are the new holes where you walk up the hill onto top of the raised beach, play along, play down the other side, and then finish the 9, 10, 11 along the bottom of the raised beach to get you back to where 12 is. So again, using the elevation and using the changes in there. But it's how they shape the fairways. We're talking, whether it's relevant now about Cool Winks. Cool Winks is a proposed development not far from here, and they're talking about not digging up anything, just mowing grass to try and get the fairways to try and make the course. And that's how we started. When you look 150 years ago, that's how the game started. They didn't have big bulldozers. They didn't have the money. They didn't have probably the foresight to say, let's dig something up. Let's just cut the grass from here to here, and there's a golf hole. And and the guys with the proper imagination could see the topography and the contours, and they cut the grass that way to make that hole. And so I think that's where Cool Winks are going. I think that's what makes Dornoch unique in that particular way, is the way that they've taken the undulations and left them alone.
Who's doing Cool Links?
If it does come to pass, it's a Bill Coor design, and Mike Kaiser will come in and help with the construction.
You know where it's at? It's obviously been quite topical, and I think last time I was up there, there was a number of meetings happening and decisions, and all of the SSI reporting had been done. Yeah, do you know where it's at?
Well, we had a big hearing second week in November last year, 2024, and that was to review all the questions. Both sides got to sit around the table. It's a much friendlier thing than a public inquiry. So it's a more relaxed way of discussing things where both sides get to put their point across. And I wouldn't say they're not challenged by the other side, but the reporters get to ask other questions. So the reporters fed back to say it was a very well-run event, very polite. Both sides were very respectful. And so the biggest thing for us was on the Thursday evening. There's a Q&A session, so the community are allowed in to listen to the both sides giving their point of view. And so in the small room where we were at during the day, where there was 30 people, which seemed to be reasonably full, there were over 100 people squeezed into that same room.
Wow.
And so both sides would speak, and I was invited to give a statement for the development. There was about 7 or 8 on each side spoke. And so all those that spoke for the development got quite a rousing round of applause when they finished. All those that spoke against development got a very little ripple of polite and I wouldn't say hand clapping, more hand touching. And so it left the reporters with quite a sizable idea of the depth of feeling from the local people that they want this to happen. And they did say that when they left, that usually when you get such a big turnout in a community session like this, it's because they're against it, whatever the development is. But it was tangible and quite evident that the people that were there were for it. So we expect something in the springtime, a report to come out from the government. Obviously, they've got to recommend something to the politicians, and the politicians then make a decision. But I use the word optimistic rather than positive. We're optimistic that it's a much closer and a much more real thing at the moment.
Neil, you mentioned the club recently acquired that patch of land, which is towards if my southern northern hemisphere orientation is still working, is the western end of the Struy course.
Yeah, that's right. It's towards.
Cool. Before I ask you about the Struy course and to expand maybe a little bit more on the development of that, the works, you can tell me what level of development it is. You talk about Dornoch integrating itself into the community, and I spent some time. I walked all of the Struy course, and to get my first taste of it. What I know is I passed half of the local community either driving through there, walking through there, down to the beach, parking near the airport. It was certainly a hive of activity of people not playing golf, but just accessing other parts of Dornoch and the Dornoch Firth via the course. Is that intention to, when you do the work on the Struy, to keep that accessibility for the community to be able to access the beach and so on and so forth?
Well, very much, Rods. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that the golf course gives to the community, and a lot of the land that you've discussed there is common good land. And so the community are allowed access to it, and the right to roam acts mean that people do that. But no, we're very conscious that it is a wonderful part of the world, and not everyone is a golfer. Strange. So they may seem they are not a golfer. They do want to come here, and dog walking is a very big pastime up here. It's we don't have a dog ourselves, my wife and I, but it's very unusual. Most households have a dog, and so dog walking is good. So, but to your point, I mean, Dornoch, Malcolm's mentioned the whiskey festival. The Thompson brothers have a distillery in Dornoch, and they've just got planning permission to build a much bigger and better one, a much more eco-friendly, renewable one, and that's on part of the land bordering the golf course. And we're in many discussions with them because they want to create a path network through their land, which takes us onto our land, and we will carry on that path network so people can enjoy the views, enjoy what golf course gives you, because there's some beautiful sights and things to see. We're very environmentally friendly, so we've got our beehives, we've got our wildflower meadows, we've got all the other things that the environmentalists would like to see and we enjoy doing, and so we want people to access that. And all we ask, and it's sometimes maybe down where you are in East Lothian, where there's a lot more walkers crossing golf courses. It's just that people have a bit of respect to as you do when you cross the road. Look left and look right to make sure it's safe to cross, and not just demand that you can have access and march across the fairways. What most people are, we just find one or two are quite obstinate about saying, "I'm allowed to be here." And I said, "No, you are, but be careful you don't hit by a golf ball."
Last question from me, and I'll hand back to Malcolm. So you've taken on some challenges there, which are either every club general manager and membership manager's biggest challenge, worst nightmare, biggest opportunity to have an impact on a golf club. And you've currently got a new clubhouse under construction, and then you've got the work of the Stewie course as well. The clubhouse construction, does that impact the Stewie course? And, how does that see whatever changes you intend to make to the Stewie course? What's the feeling there of what might the Stewie start to look like in terms of layout, and how significant is the work that you intend to undertake there?
Yeah, did it impact the Stewie course? Yes, in a minor way, that it's built next or between the first hole and the first hole of the championship course. So it did impact on the Stewie's first hole. So we took the decision to shorten it from a par 4 to a par 3, so there was no going to be any danger with the golf balls coming into the construction site. So we've done that. But that also leads on to the fact that we have had lots of ideas about extending the Stewie course. And it was back in 2013 that Tom Mackenzie, the golf course architect, identified a piece of land that we've now purchased. And so this has been in the works for a long time. We've also, and so because we shortened the first hole to a par 3 last winter, winter of 23-24, we constructed a new par 3 out towards the new land that we're talking about, the far end of the course. So we're ready to close the first hole of the Stewie as it is now and start at the second hole. And part of the ideas for where we built the clubhouse, not on the existing site, which was obviously a potential, as I've said, between the first hole and the of the championship, the first hole of Stewie, was to get us closer to the land on the Stewie, because that's where the development potential is. The championship course is landlocked. There's no way of doing any more with it, no other direction to move it. All the land that we have available is on the Stewie side of the development of the area that we have. And so that's why the clubhouse is now slightly closer to them. We've all ideas, and we'll see what our architects come back with, that we close, as we just said, the first hole of the Stewie, the second and the 18th, which are both quite short par 3s. And we start at our third hole, which is only 100 yards away. And so that what we want to do, and what we've asked the architects to do, is to give us not just a Stewie course extension, but a master plan of facilities that Royal Dornoch Golf Club could have within the next 50 years. Driving ranges, short courses, 9-hole courses, simulator rooms, short game areas, putting areas, Himalayas putting course, anything that they've seen around the world that Dornoch should have in its portfolio facilities to attract any age, ability, style of golfer. Somebody who wants a quick 9-hole, somebody wants a game of putting, somebody wants a lesson, a club fitting, somebody wants to just practice. We want to provide that range of facilities because I say we're a community golf club, and we've got to provide the widest range of opportunities for people to come to Dornoch and spend their time here with us. So that's what the master plan is. And in fact, more than just the Stewie course itself, is what can you give us? What can you suggest to us that we can put in that'll make Dornoch the destination within Scotland, within the world, to come and do golf?
Significant undertaking, significant challenge, and I'm sure that there are a handful of people out there that have already worked on projects where they've delivered those outcomes to courses that they've worked with. So I'm looking very much forward to seeing that unfold.
So Neil, just following on from that, all that kind of stuff coming in, you've got the new stuff happening at Cabot. How's that with the accommodation and the new Petty course going to impact?
Yeah, it's a good question, Malcolm. And Old Petty has preview plays, as they call them, this August. And so we're invited down to see that. And I know they're planning some lodges or something. I'm not sure quite what it's going to manifest itself as. But I think it's a good thing. I think it's its own different attraction to us. I mean, the original Castle Shore course is great. I enjoy playing it, but it is a links course of its type. All the brand new ones, Bandon Dunes, Sand Valley, all these things have a style to them. And they are links courses, but of a new style. You're nodding your heads there. I think the traditional links courses are different. I think these guys are not recreating. They're developing a new brand of links courses. It's still bounce and run and big greens and lots of shapes and deep bunkers, but it's a different style. It's a very playable style. I enjoy going to Castle Stewart because it's very difficult to lose a golf ball. And I'm pretty sure that Tom Doak has created Old Petty in the same feel, where it's very playable. But as to the accommodation question, Malcolm, I think it's a good thing to have. I don't think they'll ever have that much accommodation that will detract from coming to Dornoch. And I think if we work in tandem and develop in tandem, we'll create things that people want to stay in both locations for. I'd say we've discussed hotels already, and I think that what we offer is strong enough to compete with what they might offer. But I think it's what they're going to offer is slightly different in the way that people consume golf and consume their accommodation.
So that could be kind of an addition and a combination. So I mean, if you're going to come and play golf in the Highlands, I mean, Inverness Airport, how would you get to the Highlands, apart from asking Dave to put a tour together? Because you're about 50%, tour operators 50%.
No, thankfully, I would say it's grown a little bit since I've been here, but we're about 1/3 tour operators. I think when I started, it was about 33%. I think we're up now about 37% of our business is tour operator related, which means the other 60% is independent business, which is a good mix, because while I love my tour operator friends, I don't want to have to rely on them too heavily, because then some of them, not Dave obviously, would start calling the tune about what was happening. And I think to keep this balance is very good. And I've known Dave for a while, as you, Malcolm. We have a very great relationship with our tour operators, and not to mention the PGA show again, Ross, but part of the reason to go there is to speak to all the tour operators, the American-based ones as well as the UK-based ones that go out, to make sure that we're all on the same page. And I'd say the relationships I've grown with these guys is brilliant. And certainly it's guys and girls in the industry to make golf what it is, and we're not dealing in brain surgery here. It's just golf, so we should all be a bit relaxed about working together and making it as available and as good as it can be for the whole world. And if you get a piece of business I don't, then that's no issue. As long as somebody's playing golf, I'm happy.
But you can fly into Inverness, can't you?
Sorry, back to your question, Malcolm. Yes. Yeah, that's the trouble. Inverness really is not an international airport, so you need to hub somewhere, and it's Heathrow, Gatwick, and Amsterdam are the three main hubs. Gatwick not so much, but Heathrow and Amsterdam can. And in fact, when I fly to the PGA show, I'm going Inverness to Heathrow and out that way. It'd be lovely, and I know Ben Cowan-Deer from Cabot is keen to try and increase the international traffic to Inverness if that's possible, and he's looking into that from Canada. But certainly it's very possible to do it, hubbing, but you've got to hub, and I know some of our people don't like to hub, but certainly I would recommend it, because the drive from Inverness to Dornoch is beautiful. The hour's drive from the airport is stunning, and it's a much better drive than the 4 hours from Glasgow to Edinburgh coming up the dreaded A9. So please, yeah, I mean, we were discussing at the weekend, our friends and I, about Dublin. Dublin's a very underutilised hub, and we need to try and maximise that again, because you can get your US clearance in Dublin. So it makes your transition when you get here or home much quicker. So if we can speak to Loganair, if we do the Dublin flight, about maximising that, then hopefully there's more. But yeah, land in Inverness, hire a car, get a lift, and come and enjoy the views up to Dornoch.
And just very quickly, before we can finish up, where do you think golf's going? A lot of talk about pricing now and all the rest. Where do you think we're going in the next 5 years?
I think we're in a very good spot. I think there is a natural wastage thing going on here. I mean, as you know, Malcolm, I'm the chair of Golf Highland, and we've got our meeting this Thursday to discuss that, about where some of the clubs are, and some clubs are closing, but some clubs are doing really well. Most of our clubs in Golf Highland have increased their visitor revenue over the last year. Their membership may be a bit up and down, but their visitor revenue is good. So I think with over 600 courses in Scotland, that's a lot for 5 million people. It's a lot for people to maintain. So is it a natural wastage? Probably. But the clubs that can work at it, and it takes some work to get it done, can survive. The ones that are fighting within themselves are the ones that are disappearing. The ones that are aligned to make sure that their business is out there and the club team, whatever it is striving to make it the best, can make it happen. Whether it's your Dornochs or your Brodas or your Darnesses, they're all working together to better their club, and these are the ones that are surviving. So it doesn't matter what scale you are, you need to put a bit of effort in, and you need to make sure that you know what your brand is. And Brand Scotland is about inviting people to come and play golf. And there is very few courses that are closed in Scotland to non-members. We're all open to it, and we should value that and what the game of golf in Scotland has brought us and what it's given to the world. So I think it's all possible, Malcolm. And I think the game is in a very strong place. And if you go back to your green fee question, sorry, Ross, Paul from the GM at Nairn is going out to the PGA show as well, and he's managed to get himself a game at Sawgrass. Yeah, and through a connection, he's managed to get his green fee at $350. And one of his members wants to join him and is going to join him, but his member is going to pay $700 to play at Sawgrass. So is there a battle in green fees? I think there is. But I think what we're not doing is looking outside of our own circle. We're not looking at what the green fees are in the United States. We're not looking at the green fees in Thailand or Australia or whatever it is to say, are we competing in the market? But are we competing in the world market? We're all wringing a hand saying, well, Dornoch's going to charge £320. Well, Portrush is $395 and Troon's going to, but what is that relative to our customers' base? Our customer base in North America are paying $700 for a round of golf. Go to Pebble Beach, you've got to stay 2 nights in the lodge before you pay your $1,000 for your green fee. So we should really take a much broader view of what green fees are over the world sphere and not just within Scotland itself. So I think there's an opportunity for us to sit back and look a bit wider, Malcolm, at green fees. Yes, they are punchy, but are they punchy relative to what the market says?
And they're also very disparate on different golf courses, because whilst there's one at 300 or 400, there's one at 75 or whatever. And on the Scotland Golf Began website, you'll see a whole bit there talking about the Highlands and Islands golf courses. What's the website for Highland Golf?
Golfhighland.com.
Golfhighland.com. I know. Very own Alan Minto helps a bit with that.
Alan is right, yeah. We've got Alan Minto helps with our social media and our website, and Gordon Bannerman, a great press writer, helps with that as well as other things. So we've got a good team of people helping us get the word out there.
So, boys, you got any more questions? We could go on for about 10 years here, but
I'm conscious that Neil's going to catch that flight to Florida that Ross likes to hear about so much. So we shouldn't hold him back all day. But and I know you're clearly a very busy man, Neil. I think what I always enjoy having a conversation with you, because your enthusiasm for the game, not just in Dornoch, but like in the wider Highlands region, in the whole of Scotland, is just infectious. And every time we have a conversation, I come off even more excited about the prospect of what golf in Scotland can be. So I really enjoyed the time with you today. Thank you so much.
But again, Neil's that kind of golfer. And I was chatting to Grant Forrest the other day, and Grant won the amateur, I think, up at Dornoch, and he said he was playing this old boy in the first round, thought it'd be a bit of a scoosh, and found he was two down after 2 playing against Mr. Hampton. But we're going to wrap it up now. We've got the Curtis Cup kind of on. The club's going from strength to strength under your 10-year leadership up there, Neil. So thanks a lot for coming up. And if you're up there, good to visit, go and say hello. Go and check out the Dornoch website. You can get to it through scotlandgolfbegan.com. And the other thing you got up there is Gordon MacPhail, which I think have probably got the biggest collection of aged whiskies in the world. So it's not just golf; it's whiskey and all things fun. And the whole Highland, that area is developing slowly but surely. Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing from Neil. Great golf club, great destination, great man. Check it out. Neil is one of the good guys in the world. Dornoch is one of the great golf courses in the world. Go visit. You'll find us on scotlandwheregolfbegan.com, social, Where Golf Began, Facebook, at Where Golf Began. Drop us a line on info@scotlandwheregolfbegan.com. thank you very much. We'll see you soon, speak to you soon, wherever you are. Be good, be careful, stay safe, but that's all boring. Go play golf.